Hi, I'm Sting Kirby of Tennessee's Coast here at the Tennessee Challenger. We're with Pat Hanssen of Har-Tru Sports, who Har-Tru, of course, is the green clay that they're playing the Challenger on.
Yeah.
Just tell us a little bit about Har-Tru first and the product and everything like that.
Yeah, you bet. So Har-Tru is a brand that's been around for a long time. In fact, the first Har-Tru court was built in 1932 in Hagerstown, Maryland, and it sort of expanded from there. It was originally a product that came from roofing granules, and a gentleman identified those granules as an interesting substance to build a court out of, and did that in 1932, and it works so well compared to real clay because it's crushed stone and water drains off it a lot better. In fact, we're seeing some of that today during the tournament. So anyhow, the brand expanded and was mostly used at private country clubs in the East Coast for a long time, or residences, and eventually people got to play on the surface more and more, and it became the surface of the U.S. Open for a few years in the mid-1970s, and continues to thrive today as sort of what they would call the American clay or the Korean clay.
Sure, and of course we're here at the Challenger. Actually, we've had a lot of on and off rain today, so just talk about the precipitation system with the way it drains off and just the technical details of that.
Yeah, you bet. So Har-Tru courts were generically called fast dry courts, and they were called that for a reason, which was that compared to their clay court brethren, they managed to dry very, very quickly. They dry in two ways. First of all, the court's built with a little bit of a slope on it, and so some of the water that hits the surface runs down the slope and drains off of it. But also the court is porous, and it's built with a stone base that is porous, that essentially acts like a sponge. So when the water lands on the court, some runs off, but some soaks in, and the water that soaks in helps maintain stability in the court, regardless of whether it's very hot and dry or whether it's kind of damp like today.
And Har-Tru is sponsoring the French Open Wildcard Series of 3 Challenger events, Sarasota, Savannah, and Tallahassee, which was won by Alex Kuznetsov this year. So just talk about your partnership with the USTA Pro Circuit and the decision to sponsor the series of 3 events.
Yeah, gosh, it's very exciting for us to be a partner of the USTA and to be a partner with each of these events. We believe that clay has an integral role to play in the development of champions, and our country as a whole, when the surface moved off of Har-Tru onto hard courts towards the end of the 70s, the game changed a little bit, and in this country there was a premium on power and on hitting the ball hard, and that was good for a while. But right now hard courts have slowed down, the grass has slowed down, and a lot of tournaments are played on clay. And so what's happened is our athletes are maybe a little less versatile than some of the athletes you see from Europe in places where they have to train on clay, they have to improve their footwork, their balance, those sorts of things. So for us, to answer your question, to partner with the USTA was something we were very excited to do to help promote and develop the game of tennis, but specifically to have an impact on these athletes who are striving to become the next generation of champions. It's important to us. I mean, that's really what we're about as a company. We're a tennis company that loves the game and wants to help people, achieve their best.
And talk about maybe some of the company's other efforts to develop on clay, as the hashtag says, with juniors and that kind of thing, other events that are on Har-Tru and that kind of thing.
Well, I'm sorry, are you talking about?
Like events that you sponsor or?
Oh, sure. So, a lot of our focus has been West Coast based recently, because most of the clay courts that exist on the East Coast. So we are in Florida. I bet you 50% of the courts in Florida are Har-Tru. You go to California, it's less than 1%. But if you look historically at where most of the Grand Slam champions have come from in this country, most have come from the West Coast, where they have an incredible tennis community and produce a lot of top talented juniors. So we've been focusing on sponsoring some clay court events over there, training centers, junior shootouts, trying to reach out to some of the top kids on the West Coast to see if we can get them on clay a little more and help them become more comfortable on that surface. And generally speaking, you think about tennis and the way kids develop in our country, is even on the East Coast you might have clay court events that you can play on as a junior, but you get to high school, it's all about hard courts. You get to college, it's all about hard courts. And so there's a bit of a deficit when it comes to some of the things the lessons you need to learn by playing on clay. So we've sponsored we were part of the Dick Vitale Clay Court Invitational Tournament that was held at Lakewood Ranch last year. We try to participate in local tournaments in the Charlottesville area, some of the challengers. We do things like we're part of 10 and under tennis initiatives to grow the game at that level. So we do a lot of volunteerism and sponsorship, again with the goal of seeing, hey, how can we help our players get a leg up when it comes to clay court surfaces and tennis in general.
Sure, and you mentioned, of course, way back in the 1970s, the U.S. Open was played on Har-Tru, green clay, as they call it.
Yep.
Is there been, obviously there's not any ATP events that are on green clay right now, the Charleston WTA is, but
right.
Has there been any, do you know of anything about maybe having an ATP event on green clay or moving in that direction?
There's nothing right now. There used to be some events. Delray Beach used to be on clay for a little while.
And Atlanta was in the 90s,
Atlanta was, correct, and we were a sponsor of that tournament when that one was coming around. Certainly what they do in Houston, the U.S. Clay Court Championships, that's actually our product on there. It's just a red product.
Okay.
That's similar in nature, not quite the same. It's a little different stone, different color, and it has brick dust mixed in. So we are involved with that event. But you know, your question is a really good one that we ask ourselves all the time. In that Har-Tru is a uniquely American surface, and we're biased, but we would love to see there be a high-level event on Har-Tru. And I don't know if recently you happened to read Paul McNamee had a blog where he talked specifically about the Sony Ericsson and whether it might make sense since Indian Wells has become such a huge event under Larry Ellison's ownership, and it's almost made the Sony Ericsson a little less impressive comparatively. And Paul McNamee's comment was, hey, maybe there's an opportunity here to switch that court to switch that tournament to Har-Tru. Be good for the players because they're already prepping for French Open anyhow. Good transitional surface, and it'd be good for the U.S. because it would provide its own brand of clay court that they could really highlight the event with.
I spoke with Gerald Meltzer from Austria today, and he mentioned that he likes playing on Har-Tru. That was one of the questions I asked him. So, talk about the feedback you've gotten from other players, especially the professionals, in regards to the surface.
Yeah, it's very interesting in that most people characterize Har-Tru as faster and more consistent in its pace than red clay, and most like it. They find the footing very secure, and particularly if they've got a pretty big serve, they find that they're able to do pretty well on our surface. Now it's difficult to compare to red clay because red clay can be as slow as mud and as fast as brick, right? Where Har-Tru plays in a very narrow range, and I think some players like that. Some really embrace it. And some would say maybe this isn't the real thing, this isn't real clay, but certainly everybody feels like it's definitely a positive surface to play on in terms of, hey look, it makes us do the things that you have to do to be a clay court player, and it's a very comfortable, safe surface.